Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. We have some exciting news we think we'd like to share with you. This sort of represents a historic moment, I think, in the history of Seattle. We've reached a groundbreaking agreement with the rank and file police officers that fundamentally transforms how we deliver public safety in our city. This contract that we've been able to negotiate and almost get it across the finish line with some council work really moves the care department, the community assistant response engagement department, from a pilot to a permanent entity, from a promise to public safety to a complete paradigm shift. And again, it removes the limits on its growth. I'll just refer to it as the care department. On its growth, allowing for unlimited hiring and solo dispatch of responders to people in behavioral health crisis that need help. And I'm going to solicit an applause for that right now because I'm very excited about that. This is good for everybody affected in our city. And it also significantly strengthens police accountability, meeting key elements of the 2017 accountability ordinance and strengthening our entire system. The truth of the matter is this agreement represents years of difficult but necessary negotiations. It builds on the progress of prior agreements in the 2017 accountability ordinance and advances our comprehensive, diversified public safety system to serve every neighborhood. Let me talk a little more specifically about what it does, but I want to ground my remarks in a quote. The greatest college basketball coach of all time. I'm not going to say who it is. If you follow basketball sports, James, you're thinking, who's that person right now, right? I'm going to give you the quote right now. Okay. It takes time to create excellence. It can be done quickly. If it could be done quickly, more people would do it. This legendary coach also said, be quick, but don't hurry. Now that one should have giving you some notice. Who said that? I don't have any college basketball.
John Wooden.
There you go, John Wooden. John Wooden, the NC2A basketball coach and 10-time champion. And I wanted to ground us in that quote because if it could have been done quickly, it certainly wouldn't have. But what we're looking for is sustainable practices in building an entire public safety system. And that's why we're very happy to announce what we're trying to do. So going back to more specifically, what this agreement does is it allows the care department to become, again, a permanent, co-equal third pillar of our public safety system. Joining, of course, our police and fire as essential first responders. Now, Seattle is the largest city in the country with this model of alternative unarmed response. We are leading the way. We will now be able to remove the pilot's 24 responder cap, making it possible for us to hire more community crisis responders, as well as to solo dispatch them to an array of calls, including those suffering from behavioral health crisis. Now, as the responder team has grown in size and footprint, we've, quite frankly, just scratched the surface of what's possible. These results are transformative, and while they've been addressing thousands of incidents in the last 2 years and over 5,000 incidents in 2025 alone, this agreement will allow care responders to respond to thousands more. The next phase of care as a permanent co-equal public safety department is the vision we've been working for since day one of our administration. I want to say that I'm very proud to report that the Seattle Police Department will hire more officers in 2025 than in 2024 and 2023 combined. This new contract for the rank and file officers will build on our progress to turn around what was a staffing crisis. And I want to thank the officers for their work and for their ratification of this agreement. I want to thank management in the police department as well as the chief and his command structure for all working together to make sure that we are optimizing our department. This contract ensures that Seattle will remain competitive with other major city police departments and adds incentives for the skills that modern policing requires, with pay premiums for associate's degrees, bachelor's degrees, and bilingual officers. These recruitment improvements will allow us to build a police force that reflects our community's diversity and meets the demands of 21st century public safety. With respect to accountability, excuse me, this contract delivers significant accountability reforms that address concerns raised by the accountability entities and the community and builds on the successful resolution of the federal consent decree earlier this year. Number one, we're establishing a clear 180-day timeline for resolving investigations, bringing contract language into alignment with our 2017 accountability ordinance and resolving a key outstanding accountability measure from the federal consent decree. We're also creating a streamlined process for supervisors to address minor performance and misconduct issues in a consistent way and to discipline when appropriate. This contract allows for civilian investigators in our Office of Police Accountability to work on cases involving potential termination. It is critical to have civilians working on the most serious disciplinary cases. This contract also allows our efforts to increase that's a tough word for Bruce, civilianization within SPD, now authorizing civilians to work in the backgrounding unit. So the next step in the process will be for both parties to present, not on my A game today, people. So it's been a long week and we're not even halfway through. I'm always on my A game, by the way, that's just a joke. Let me sort of close by saying this, in all seriousness. I said this morning to a bunch of folks that public safety is our charter responsibility. At the end of the day, there's, of course, an intersection between public safety, economic development, and education. So in other words, all three of these parts of the ecosystem make sure that we are safe, we can learn, and we can optimize our lives and provide for our families. This care department is intended to do exactly that, to make sure that our whole ecosystem of public safety responses are done in a compassionate way, an empathetic way, and now a best practice. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to, I'm not sure the order, I had it written down, but they just gave me this. Chief Barden says that way, and she's going, oh, here it is, a little sticky. So we're doing this order, so I won't have to read. We're going to hear from Chief Amy Barden. It is going to be your turn, and then Chief Barnes, you'll be second. Council President Nelson, you'll be third, and Council Member Kettle will be fourth, and then we'll address some Q&A. Chief Barden, it is your time to shine.
Good morning. So 2 years ago, almost to the day, the care responders took the very first calls downtown. I was actually away at a mayor's cabinet retreat, and I was watching my phone anxiously. I wondered if SPD would request the team. I wondered what types of circumstances they would encounter. I knew statistically it was unlikely that anyone would be hurt, but I really worried about it nevertheless. In spite of all that fretting, everything was fine. The team was prepared. They were professional, they were resourceful, they were effective. They consistently achieved that balance of compassion and urgency that the work requires. 9 times out of every 10 calls, it was a request from SPD officers who during that first year frequently reached out to me to praise the team and to convey their support. We were scientific in our pilot development. I had studied and spent time in a lot of different jurisdictions doing things like this, and I had some theories about the needs, the services, the transportation inventory, and the skills required. But we didn't make assumptions, and we didn't try to map out exactly how things would go. I learned along with the team. Many people need rides somewhere. We learned that quickly, somewhere safe, somewhere warm. I learned quickly we need car seats, and so we got a bunch of those. I learned a lot of people need shoes, and then I learned that that's really challenging because shoes take up a lot of space, and of course it's not a one-size-fits-all. I continue to read weekly the reports, the narrative of every call that care goes on. Besides learning a lot about the needs and the suffering of our neighbors, I have personally learned to navigate a sort of pervasive and perpetual sadness and a frustration about the inadequacy of our system to heal and to rehabilitate. And I imagine our first responders and our frontlines nonprofit workers feel exactly what I feel, only magnified. The task of the care responders is essentially to interact with those who have lost hope, those who are untethered from reality sometimes, those who are nearly lost to brutal cycles of addiction, those who are experiencing the impacts of being unhoused. The work is specifically complex. Our calls don't get resolved with an arrest, a jail booking, or a simple drop at the emergency department. And establishing enough trust and credibility with people to get close to what is actually going on in someone's lives, it sometimes takes a minute. It takes several encounters. Nationally, there's a really interesting conversation going on about how long you try to engage before interacting with somebody in a coercive way, because sometimes that can be life-saving. To date, as the mayor referenced, our care responders have logged over 6,800 incidents. About 40% of those calls involved referral to services. 28% of those calls included a ride to somewhere safer, warmer, or more stable. We have responded to 93 different call types. The most common are assist the public, welfare check, down person, crisis, domestic violence, and suicidal person. Interestingly, during the past 2 years, care responders have only requested SPD support 15 times. That represents less than half of 1% of the time. And for context, the Seattle Fire Department requests support on a call, that many calls every couple weeks. Our protocols are the same. It's not as complex in the field as people think. We use the same protocols for care that we do for fire and EMS. So I have been surprised at the vast range of needs and how varied those circumstances tend to be. One of the interesting things we've learned is what makes a really good crisis responder. It's not necessarily that formal education, although everybody does have formal education. It is actually the ability to rapidly assess, to triage, to employ a high degree of adaptability, flexibility, cultural awareness, emotional intelligence. The team has managed to really map that nonprofit resource map intelligently, thoroughly, because we know that we just need to connect the person to the right service, regardless of whether there's a formal government contract. You all know we've been operating under pretty severe SPOG MOU constraints, and those guide rails I considered very, very useful for the first 1,000 calls, but today they're not useful any longer, so I do celebrate this moment. There are about 47,000 calls a year that fall into the categories that the newly established care body of work pertains to. And so as we scale to 48 responders available citywide next year, nearly around the clock, I believe we will start to see some meaningful impact. Fewer referrals to the ED, fewer jail bookings, more intakes into service. At my first press conference, I explained that the primary short-term ambition of this pilot was to get SPD to priority 1 calls faster. Now, obviously, the care pilot could not meaningfully impact that metric because officers were still directed to go to most of the calls. The care average response time to a call to date is still 13 minutes. And I know how much it's going to mean to our community to be able to call 911, describe a neighbor who really needs help and does not pose a public safety threat, and have responders there in 10 minutes. Our neighbors calling deserve that kind of urgency, and our neighbors languishing on the street deserve that kind of urgency. I want to thank and acknowledge Lisa Herbold and Andrew Lewis for the strong advocacy, their insistence that we innovate. I see Deputy Mayor Tim Burgess here. I thank you. He was my first boss and was wildly supportive and instrumental to what is happening today. I once again acknowledge the vision, resolve, leadership, the relentless work of the care team manager, Catriona Hernandez, is over here. If there is a name that is remembered for this progress generations from now, it should be hers. And then additionally, back in 2023, I met a number of colleagues in the Seattle Police Department for the first time that set the stage and really enabled the success that we celebrate today. They supported what I was trying to do, not because of police staffing shortages, not because of political pressure, but because they understood that the people I was trying to help did not need more arrests or more penalties. They did the right thing for the right reason, regardless of potential repercussions. And so I want to thank Chiefs Mahaffey, Kibbe, Maxey, Nelson, Barden, Agard, and Brown. And then also for a time, I nearly doubled the workload of Dr. Rebecca Boatwright and Dr. Lauren Atherley in SPD, who helped us to establish the policies, the protocols, and provided access to the crucial crisis data that really helped us to frame up the pilot to begin with. Today, I think still Lieutenant Gohagan, Sergeants Wicker and Sullivan, Zian Drignas and the CRT team, and then John Ehrenfeld with Mobile Integrated Health Team. So it is strange how life can prepare us to meet certain moments. About 8 years ago, I was working at a nonprofit in the Midwest that provided a really broad continuum of services for kids in mental health crisis, including day treatment in schools. I really preferred the front lines, same as I do today. I was always in the classroom as much as I could be, or I was out on the playground. I got to know a lot of the kids, and I became attached to a lot of the kids. And by that point in my career, I understood really well the treacherous circumstances many were trying to transcend or still trying to navigate. One day, I was alerted that one of our sweet boys, who was about 10, had run off of campus and toward the nearby freeway, expressing a wish to die. Our teachers and our clinicians were able to safely go out, intervene, and get him back to campus. And I could not believe it when then a police car showed up to transport him to the children's hospital. I asked my colleagues why I was in a clinical environment, so they understood why it was problematic. But their response was, "That's how it's done here, Amy. It's always been like that." When we are talking about human suffering, we need to do better, and we need to demand better. That is how it has been done is unacceptable. The status quo is unacceptable. The historic pace and process of bureaucracy is unacceptable. There has always been a space in between round everybody up and arrest them and do nothing and call it compassion. There is a space between chronic underinvestment and throwing millions of dollars at a problem and hoping for the best. And there is a space between justice with no mercy and mercy with no justice. And so we must dwell in that space between. Next year, we're going to have a direct partnership with King County Jail, with the hospitals, to ensure that people who are likely to be back in the throes of crime and crisis are not simply ejected onto our streets with no plan and no support. We are developing 988 integration and structuring crisis call diversion and new protocols. We will invest in technology that provides for shared records management across first responders, so we are more likely to break these cycles of crime and crisis in individual lives. And I will keep advocating alongside many of my colleagues that the first responders should be availed of every stabilization resource needed for a person. So in closing, I really lack the words to express gratitude to our community members. More days than not, I am sent a really wonderful message affirming my faith in humanity and cheering for us. I've learned I'm not in a minority of people who care deeply and want change. On the contrary, most Seattleites really do care. Most people do hope and believe that things can be different and can be better. I see you all organizing and mobilizing, volunteering, donating, writing letters of support. There was a low-key Free the Care Team campaign I thought was kind of funny. You are all doing your part, and it is time for us to do ours. And this MOU creates significantly more opportunity for the progress that you have demanded and the progress that you deserve. And so in closing, I'm going to quote my chief of staff. When he heard about the contract yesterday, he just wrote back in all caps, "Let's go." So thank you.
Thank you, Chief Barden. Next year, Chief Barnes.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Spring it, make sure everybody's still awake. I want to begin by expressing my sincere appreciation to Mayor Harrell for his steadfast commitment to making Seattle safer and stronger. Under his leadership, the Seattle City has made tremendous strides toward restoring public safety and improving quality of life and supporting the men and women of the Seattle Police Department who serve this great city each and every day. Today, I want to acknowledge this very important milestone, select a successful collective bargaining agreement between the City of Seattle and the Seattle Police Officers Guild. Although the Chief of Police is not a part of the negotiation, I want to commend both sides for reaching an agreement that supports the wellness, stability, and financial safety of our officers. A well-supported police department means a safer community. When officers feel valued and equipped, they're better able to provide a level of service, the level of service that our community expects and that our community observes. The major points have already been highlighted. I just wanted to say that I definitely support all of the major highlights, including the expansion of the care team. As some of you know, I came to Seattle from Madison. We had a fully supported and staffed care team with the ability to do solo dispatch, so that's not anything new to me, and we certainly support that. We support the accountability alignment with the 2017 ordinance, as well as the investigations improvements, allowing our supervisors to do just that, which is supervise the people that they are accountable to each and every day. The agreement modernizes our wages and keeps benefits high so that we can, of course, maintain a well-staffed police department, which translates into public safety for everyone. So I want to give a couple of highlights really quickly. Our summer months, which we define as between May 15th and September 15th, we saw tremendous decreases in crime. 56% decreases in homicides along that period compared to last year, 9% decrease in robberies, and 22% decrease in burglaries, which includes commercial as well as residential burglaries. But we also agree that policing alone cannot solve every challenge that we have in this city. That is why we're deeply appreciative of the mayor's support in allowing the Seattle Police Department to work more closely with other city departments in order to maintain public safety. We are also rebuilding our department's capacity, and we believe that this agreement will help us continue that great work. This year alone, we have hired 134 new entry-level police officers and 17 lateral entry officers, bringing our total hire to 152. And we're going to continue to move on, and I'm certainly pressing people to continue to do more. This is the most significant hiring I believe we've seen in years. These new officers represent the future of our department, and their arrival marks the beginning of our transition from crisis management to proactive, community-centered policing. I want to thank the men and women of the Seattle Police Department, Mayor Harrell and his administration, for their dedication, resilience, and professionalism, which is the foundation, which should be the foundation of our success. To the people of Seattle, we are making progress. We are making progress. We're moving in the right direction, and we will continue to do so through consistency, collaboration, and our unwavering commitment to public safety here in Seattle. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Chief. Next, we hear from our Council President, Sara Nelson, then Council Member Bob Kettle, and it's sort of in their hands now. So, Council President, look forward to hearing your remarks.
I heard brief, so. Hello, everyone. This is the contract that we're all here to learn about and discuss. Marks a monumental milestone in the years-long collaboration between City Council and Mayor Harrell's administration to deliver meaningfully on our promise to the Seattle people for reforms that bring us into the era of modern policing. And we've hit many milestones just this year. Being released from the consent decree is just one of them. And I will say that there is so much to be grateful for and to celebrate within this contract. I'll note something that I find particularly important, which is that the incentives for multilingual skills and advanced education, which will enable our officers to better respond to Seattle's very diverse population. Of course, there's also the efficiencies of the civilianization of certain tasks, et cetera. But I all know that that really what a lot of people are most excited about is the announcement of the unfettered expansion of the care department and the ability for sole dispatch. This is key. This is that component of this contract unlocks the promise of alternative response. We've been talking about this for 2 years, and when you were saying it's been 2 years almost to the day, I was standing right there. I remember that in my mind. It's been 5 years. It was October 1st, precisely, when Mayor, October 1st, 2020, when Mayor Durkin issued Executive Order 2020-10, Reimagining Policing and Community Safety in Seattle. What I'm getting at is that I'm trying to underline the gravitas of the moment. And, you know, Aristotle said, patience is bitter, but its fruit is sweet. And no one knew it would take 5 years from this executive order. Pick your milestone that we're dating from. It took a long time, and a lot of hard work, and a lot of good faith, and just pure vision also in what we could achieve together. So thank you very much for being at the helm of this vision, and I look forward to seeing its success. Thank you.
Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and the broad public safety team here, to include the Office of Police Accountability, which gives me an opportunity to note also welcome to the Community Police Commission. Really important in terms of our accountability efforts. This labor agreement with SPOG is important as we look to achieve our goals in public safety. It is critical to improve our SBD staffing, to bring on board the next generation of sworn officers, to allow detectives to be detectives, backup specialty units, to bring on a bike team, for example, to assist our neighbors and our neighborhoods. It is important to press forward an alternative response, to bring solo dispatch to care, to diversify our range of options to meet our public safety challenges, particularly those without a criminal basis. That diversity is important. It is imperative to continue our progress in accountability. There are different accountability measures, but I wanted to focus on frontline investigations. To highlight how long-term we must develop junior personnel to become leaders. Key here is to have only major offenses to go to OPA, as the legislation says, which also, by the way, will help OPA do its job, to allow it to continue its mission better. But these lesser offenses, however, need to be addressed by our sergeants. They need to be addressed by our sergeants today in order to have better lieutenants, captains, assistant chiefs, deputy chiefs, and maybe chiefs of the future. We have to invest in our leaders early to get the return later. To conclude, this labor agreement, particularly with the public safety work done by our city over the past 2 years, demonstrates the seriousness that we take our public safety challenges, with the understanding, and this is important, the understanding that there's still more to be done. So thank you again, Mr. Mayor, the team, and for everyone for joining us today. And I like to say, that was probably the briefest. All right, and I knew John Wooden too. I want to get credit for that.
In closing, before we take some questions, again, I want to thank all of our police officers who supported this agreement, our labor partners, and clearly everyone in the community who advocated for a comprehensive and collaborative approach to public safety. And so before we take questions, I also want to note that you heard quotes from both Aristotle and John Wooden in the same press conference. You don't get that every day. And with that, let's take some questions. David.
Do the salary raises here, are those included in your budget? Is the city going to have to come up with more money for those, and then have SPOG members ratify this contract?
The numbers are included in our budget. They are included in our budget. They're within the parameters that were approved by the city council, and
but these numbers are higher than the proposal that you came out with a couple of years ago.
let me give you specific what the numbers are. It's roughly 130 million over 4 years. There are, again, premiums, I think, let me look at my notes. 4% for a bachelor's degree, 1.5% for an associate degree, and 1.5% if a multilingual language is that they qualify for that premium as well. So it's 130 over 4 years.
So I guess, is the city council going to have to come up with more money to pay for the raises?
Andrew, would you? No. Short answer.
Okay. And have SPOG members ratified this agreement?
Yes. Yes, that's, sorry, it wasn't clear, but that's what we're announcing. They did ratify it. I think their process is over. Would you like to?
I can respond.
Andrew, introduce yourself.
Yep, Andrew Myerberg, I'm the mayor's chief of staff. We have SPOG ratify the agreement over the weekend, so their membership voted the agreement through. And this budget, our budget presumes the cost of the contract. So there is no new money that would need to be added. It's within our proposed budget.
And I want to recognize for those folks that are here, I could have gotten you by name, but I want to recognize those folks that didn't have speaking roles. Thank you for being here. We're all part of this this system. So, yes.
Question for Chief Barden, if I could. If you could talk a little bit more about what happens after the care team responds, and you talk about the network of nonprofits and people that help this population, and I realize every piece is probably different, but how does the care team then direct people into services? And you kind of briefly mentioned coercive care when appropriate. How, where's current thinking on that?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So I always struggle to articulate the difference between first response, meaning that 911 call comes in, I rapidly, expeditiously get someone out to triage and hand off, right? This is not long-term case management. They're not meant to be outreach workers. They've done some of that because they've had the capacity to, but I expect that to change. So when I talk about that handoff, that's why I'm always talking about the behavioral health system, the nonprofits, emergency housing, and then the jails. Because that's really what we all need to focus on, is building out that, what would be the voluntary system. So if we hand off to Mary's Place, for example, or we hand off to Union Gospel Mission or the Crisis Solution Center or Connections in Kirkland, I can give you a rundown. There's about 15 frequent drop-off locations. But one of the missing pieces structurally, it's true in Seattle and everywhere, is there's no line of sight into what happens. Right? We hope that we made the correct referral, but very often law enforcement will encounter the same person again tomorrow. We'll get the same 911 call tomorrow. And so that's why the police co-responders and the fire co-responders are such close allies, because we're all working on how do we share records. If I just hand it off to lead case management, I should be able to know in my software, if we go out again, oh, that's the person's case manager. And then ultimately recommend, if the person's doing worse in 6 months, we got it wrong. It's not working, we needed to try something else. Does that make sense? Was there another part of your question I missed?
About coercive.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's exactly right. I find that the public doesn't understand that people are not resistant to services. They're resistant to, some stranger comes up and says, hey, you want housing? It's like, I don't know you. No, I don't want your help. That happens all the time, but there are outstanding teams in the city who know if you invest for a number of weeks and really get to know someone, create some trust and start to illuminate, why are they saying no? Nobody wants to be, cold and scared and wet under this bridge. We need to understand that. There's a reason somebody's making that choice. And so I think that space in between, that's where care dwells. We work with urgency. We know too much about the crimes against folks who are living unsheltered, right? Especially women who are living unsheltered are very likely incurring mounting trauma every single day. And so I'm always very specific that law enforcement is always going to be the coercive team. That's not going to be care. But I also know that we do very, very rarely refer anyone involuntarily into services. And sometimes I observe deaths, so we knew the person was going to die, right? They were wandering and muttering in traffic all the time. It was likely to happen. And so that's a challenge for the executive and legislative, but I know we have to have the conversation.
And if I could, sorry, just add a quick follow-up.
We should just get coffee. We could have a lot to talk about. Yeah.
What are the new tools we have to widen the window of intervention?
Yeah.
So we talked about long-acting buprenorphine,
Yeah.
and how that can actually give people a better chance to say yes.
Yeah.
Eventually.
Yeah, it's the coolest thing that's happened this year, in my opinion, is the Health 99 unit and SFD piloted that buprenorphine pop-up. 33 people elected into treatment. So this is long-range treatment. I know Council President Nelson has been a great advocate. My contention is if we bring treatment to people, get to know them, make it much easier to get the treatment than it is to get the drugs, of course people don't want to die on the street. Most folks I know who are in the throes of a dependency on a drug like fentanyl, they've lost their friends. They know. We have captured quotes many times of somebody saying, it is horrible to be hooked on this drug that's going to kill me, right? And so there's a lot of coordination right now. It's unprecedented. And again, we just need to start adding that software piece so that we have a line of sight. If SPD goes out, they should know, oh, SFD just reverse overdosed last week, right? Or, oh, this person has a lead case manager. So we do this analog right now with these high utilizer work groups, and we just need to invest in that structure. And again, this mayor and this mayor's office has done a great job advocating for these changes.
To follow up, Chief Barden, on treatment, you mentioned, I think, 6,800 calls for service.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have numbers on how many people to refer to treatment, how many people are currently participating in treatment?
Yeah, I would have to drill down on that 40% that I gave you. My guess is that it's probably 20 or 30%, but too often the Crisis Solution Center, it's triage, so I am a huge fan of the Orca Center because I know you've got to provide the through line. You need an initial assessment, the clinical, the medical, is this person housed, what's going on? But then a lot of folks do need some inpatient treatment, or they need really a higher degree of case management. The hardest thing in bureaucracy is designing for reentry, because even once somebody stabilizes, they can be doing really well for 60, 90 days. If they go back to exactly the same circumstances, it is very hard to hold the win. And so, again, I know a lot of us are working on that. I do think it's unprecedented collaboration right now. I mean, I don't usually say One Seattle, but it is right now. We're working hard. Yeah, and with the county as well, right? Because a lot of these interventions and dollars sit at the county level. Yeah. Oh, that's probably not for me. Okay.
Sure, go ahead, Edgar.
So you mentioned the 180-day timeline changing and the misconduct that could result in termination going to OPA, but nothing else. Can you, so I guess two questions. How is the 180-day timeline for discipline changing? And what is like a maximalist version of something that could go to a sergeant rather than OPAs?
Sure, I'm going to ask Andrew to take those questions.
So with the 180-day deadline, what the contract will do is it will adopt the definition from the accountability ordinance, which always pushed for the timeline to run from when OPA initiated or received a complaint. And as I believe you know and others know, Erica, is that it's been very convoluted over the last couple of years. There's exceptions and exceptions to the exceptions. So the idea was, and the original idea was, simplify it because you don't want OPA not being able to, or the city not to be able to discipline an officer because of some technical miss. So this was one of the major elements that resulted in the city being found out of compliance by Judge Robart in 2019. It was one of the big four that he identified. So we look at this as a pretty significant accountability accomplishment and something we've been negotiating for years. With regard to the frontline discipline, the concept with that is that we not only want officers or supervisors to be able to investigate misconduct, but we want them to be able to impose discipline. And one of the impediments with prior contracts was they could do lower level misconduct investigations, but could not impose discipline. And again, this is hugely important as a best practice for holding folks accountable internally, for developing a culture of accountability, which is something that we all talk about. I mean, that is the way to achieve it, is to hold each other accountable internally. So to answer your specific question, the types of issues that this would cover, again, it's not bias, it's not use of force, it's not dishonesty, it's no major issues. Those would all still go to OPA. But it would be minor performance issues. You parked your car in the wrong zone and there was a community complaint. You are repeatedly late to work. It's issues that have gone to OPA because since the consent decree, everything went to OPA, but they're better suited to be handled at the chain of command level. We are ensuring, though, that obviously we're not going to let things go wholesale without protections. The Office of Inspector General will have systemic oversight of this program. It'll be documented. It'll be uniform across precincts, which is another win, because right now you could handle something in South differently than you handle it in the East or in the North. And we really need there to be consistent handling of misconduct, given how people move in between precincts, and we don't want that to get lost.
Can I follow up on that, Andrew? You mentioned the concerns of Judge Robart that included arbitration. This doesn't touch arbitration.
So so one piece of this negotiation that I can explain a little bit further is that as part of the negotiation, we did negotiate around the disciplinary review system, arbitration reform that was from the SPMA contract and part of the accountability ordinance. We have reached impasse with the union on that piece. And for those that don't work in and around collective bargaining, impasse means that we brought our positions to the table and SPOG brought their positions to the table, and we could not reach an agreement on it. By reaching impasse, the next step is that we will be going to an interest arbitration on these issues, and we will receive a decision from an interest arbitrator on these important pieces. I think it's really important to note that as part of our bargain, we were not willing to compromise these accountability provisions. what has happened before our time, and I would say in past administrations, is sometimes when you compromise on the positions, you water them down, and they're no longer effective, or at least they no longer hit the elements that we tried to achieve with the accountability ordinance. So we feel really strongly that it's important at this point, and we owe it to the people of Seattle and to others to take this to interest arbitration.
Is that something you can get done at the city level, or does the area need the state?
I mean, an interest arbitrator, it's binding on the parties. So if an interest arbitrator agrees with our position, the city's position, then the changes would be made locally. And there's still obviously state options, but those are tricky as well.
Can you share exactly which issues are going to interest arbitration?
Sure. The issues that are going are the same elements of the SPMA disciplinary review system. So as you may recall, it's burden of proof, so preponderance of the evidence. It is the no gotcha rule, which just means you can't bring new evidence after the fact. It would be arbitrary and capricious. We don't want the chief's decision on discipline to be overturned unless it's arbitrary and capricious. And it would also be, we don't want de novo investigation. So the idea would be you have your opportunity to present the case, and you don't get to bring in new experts, new evidence, new items to an arbitrator, which are inherently split the baby. So that would be what we bring.
What about subpoena power for APA?
Yeah, subpoena power was not part of this agreement. It'll be part of another bargain next time we sit down with the union. Come on.
Don't go far.
Oh.
Oh, yeah, no, I got a question for Chief Barnes. Chief, I'll ask you the same question I've asked the last three chiefs here, including this interim chief over here. What's your message for our community members most impacted? We hear a lot about crime in the city and it's over there, but a lot of times people ain't talking to the ones in the neighborhoods that are most impacted by crime. What is your message to our community members who are impacted by people with these guns and gun violence in our neighborhood, our daughters being trafficked, our neighbors overdosing on fentanyl, specifically to our neighbors, to our community members in the Central District and the South End, man? Like, what are you guys doing? How should our community take SPD's efforts? What can our community do to make itself safer? And
Sure.
again, I'll say you're now the fourth chief I'm asking this question to.
So my answer is really, really simple. Number one, we will be communicating to you our efforts. To establish trust, we must be able to communicate to our community what we're doing to keep them safe. We have, for the first time in a very, very long time, a crime reduction strategy called Seattle-centric policing, which is evidence-based, which was one of the criticisms earlier on in my tenure from a OIG, I believe, or an auditor report. But more importantly, if you come to any meeting that I have, the first and last rule is we center the voices of those most impacted by our decision making. That is the premise and foundation of everything that we're doing. So let me give you some more details about that. What we have done is we have divided up how crime works and operates in absolutely every single precinct, not only here in Seattle, but everywhere from an evidence-based approach. For example, we have identified our significant incidents, our homicides, rapes, robberies, burglaries, car thefts, and we have stratified those into who is responsible for those, who's responding, and what our investigative processes look like. Then we measure what our treatment was for each and every one of those incidents and how they could have been prevented and what we could or can do better. We're identifying our crime patterns. I don't know if that's something that you're familiar with or not, but crime patterns work differently in every city. The area that you talked about, how many robberies create a pattern? We're doing that and using that through our threshold development. For us, 4 crimes within a half-a-mile radius within 10 days in Seattle creates additional crime. So when it becomes 1 or 2, we're moving our resources to address those problems. We're identifying our problem locations. This is nothing new to anyone. If you've ever traveled outside of Seattle, you will know that there are certain addresses specifically that account for an enormous amount of crime, and we're addressing those in our city with our partners. And then we're looking at those areas that are historically have significant incidents, crime patterns, as well as problem locations, and we call those priority areas. And we're focusing on those persons who are illegally carrying guns. But more importantly, we're bringing in not just the police, as Chief Barden talked about, but we're bringing in a whole of government approach to look at the underlying causes of why it's happening in the first place. Because if you do not look at the underlying causes of why crime and disorder are in your community, you're just doing the same thing over and over and over again. It's going to take time, it's going to take some patience, and it's going to take some consistency, and I believe we have the team to do it.
Thank you, Chief. And I think Councilmember Bob Kettle would like to address the question as well. Please, Bob.
Yes, I just want to say thank you for the question, and it goes to my remarks about assisting our neighbors, but also assisting our neighborhoods. We have to look out and give a voice to those that are suffering, just like you accounted for, which is on point. And by the way, it's throughout the city. And that goes to what we're doing, like with our strategic framework plan, hitting the different pieces, giving the tools to chief, like with chronic nuisance properties or after-hours establishments, all these different pieces, because it's so important to account for the neighborhoods, those communities that are suffering, and it's to have that balance. It always goes to what I say about leading with compassion, but then having the wisdom to also look out for the neighborhoods and the communities, just as you said. And I just wanted to say thank you for the question, and it goes to exactly what I said in my remarks about assisting our neighbors with compassion, like with Chief Barden, but also our communities, our neighborhoods, and I look to Chief Barnes. And we're going to do our part on the council to assist in that process. So again, thank you for that question.
Thank you, Councilmember.
With the retroactive
There goes
pay,
calling on people. Just shout it out there, Joel.
There
Go ahead.
Thank you. Can you just clarify what the base salaries are now for officers with the 6%, the 4%, what they're coming in at?
I believe it's 118,000 will be the starting, but before you write that down, let me make sure, Andrew, am I in the ballpark? 118,000. Next question. Yes, sir.
Three simple questions. Could you clarify the number of civilian investigators that will be allowed in the OPA under this contract?
I'm going to need a little assistance. The number of civilian investigators, Bonnie, would you like to? Okay. 4.
And second question, it's not clear, you started out by saying the standard of evidence would be the preponderance of evidence. Is that true or not?
So I know I didn't say that, Andrew. Can you address that? And you grab my notes, by the way. Yeah, those are all my notes.
Those are my notes. Howard, so it'll be, the standard of proof will be part of what goes to interest arbitration.
And last question, given the length and complexity of this contract, are you going to release it immediately?
Release the contract itself? Is that a practice we do, releasing the actual contract, or is that a work product? Send an email and you will get it. That's what I've just been told. Yes. No.
Quick question just on numbers. We hear about 152 new hires. You talk about your goal, I think it was north of 1,400. Where are you at with that, and how do you intend to get there?
Yes, so could someone else take, I don't have the most accurate number where we are. No, Chief, I don't know. If we can get back to you offline if I don't want to wing a number.
Yeah, I think any statistical numbers, I want to make sure that are correct. So Barbara, we'll make sure that you get those. But how are we going to get there? We have a new ad campaign that's out now. We have a new group that we partner with, Epic, who is working with us on some of our recruiting strategies. We're certainly ramping up what we're doing in our HR department. We're going to more colleges, universities, military bases, and we're really just trying to attract the right person. Numbers are important, but for me, I want to make sure that we have the right people that are going to be here. What we're seeing is some great numbers, I think. I think we had over 3,000 applications this year. Obviously, not everyone goes through with the process, so there's some attrition there, but we're going to keep pushing. For me, if you're asking me, I'd like to continue what we're doing each and every year for the next 5 years.
Question for the chief. The council has been discussing 30 by 30, and I'm curious what your plan is. Right now, it's about 9% women. 30 by 30 is planned to hire 30% women by 2030. So how are you ramping that up in your?
Yeah, so 30 by 30 is not a plan. 30 by 30 is a goal. My goal is to hire more than that if I can. But we're going to do that by looking at our processes. One of the things that I changed when I came here was any female applicant that's set to receive a rejection letter, one of our female deputy chiefs will look at that to see if there's something that we could do differently with that. but it's a lofty goal. My former department had 28% women, which is probably, I think, the highest in the country. That started in 1974 with one of our chiefs, David Cooper, and his mindset. So it's going to take some time, but we're committed to doing that one applicant at a time. And we also want to make sure that we can keep the officers that we have as well. And so we're looking at things like childcare. We're looking at things like assignment. It's not always a perfect science, but certainly we want to make sure that people know that if you are a female, you want to come work, Seattle Police Department is a great place to work. And we're highlighting our officers too, our female officers that are doing an amazing job in all segments, I think, of our department, because at the end of the day, you don't attract what you want, you attract who you are.
Yes.
The last MOU that involved CARE also gave special event bonuses to officers as kind of a trade. Are those special event bonuses in the new contract as well?
Special event bonuses, yes. David?
Back in 2016, Judge Robart expressed concern about accountability and constitutional measures being, quote, held hostage because of the link to pay for officers. These are pretty significant raises. Was CARE being held hostage in exchange for more pay?
No. Next question.
What did it take to get the dual dispatch requirement to overcome that hurdle?
An effective negotiating team, a buy-off on the vision of where modern policing is going by all, including the rank and file and the Seattle Police Officers Guild. Excellent, again, negotiating, and I think a buy-on, a belief in the Chief Amy Barden and a belief in Chief Barnes. Next question. I'm sure I'm trying to keep them quick now, so I'm trying to give everyone some day back. We have a city to run. I got a lot of people power here that have things to do. Well, I don't see another question. Do you have a question? Were you raising? Okay. So let me just thank once again for all of you, the media, for covering this, for the community leaders for believing that it could be done, and most importantly for leadership standing with me on plowing away. This is a game changer for the city. And again, I think as one of the largest cities in the country doing this, I think this is where modern policing has to go. You know, I sometimes talk about Eric Garner, who you may recall on July 17th, 2014 was the person who said, "I can't breathe." He was just selling a cigarette known as a Lucy. We all know about George Floyd, who was murdered for allegedly having a counterfeit $20 bill, and there's no proof that he even knew it was counterfeit. And I can go down with Sandra Bland, and I could go down with, many chapters in American history. Well, we said policing has to change. We're changing. So thank you, and make no mistake about it. We will continue to evolve, right, Chief? We don't have all the answers here. We are learning organizations, I said when I took this job. So we want to set the pace. We want to continue to learn, and we want to continue to lead. So thank all of you for being here, and let's go do it. And we're still mourning the Mariners' loss. I had to say that because I have to vent. That was a tough one for our entire city, but we are resilient. Maybe next year. Everyone have a great day.